We have three major updates regarding the EIDL grant program and when and if it'll open to completely new applicants, a timeline update regarding the people who have already applied for the targeted advance, and whether we can ever expect this program to be opened up to everyone again. Also, just because you guys like the animal content, I had to introduce you to my last and final animal, Onyx, the dumpster cat.
What's up?
She's pretty shy and I didn't want her screaming on camera, so I had to go to her to make that happen. But anyways, thanks to my contact at the SBA who has been an absolute blessing in this whole process, because we all know this EIDL grant program has been so confusing, so hard to follow. I couldn't even tell you how many hours I've spent reading stimulus bill text and then going back to other stimulus bills and referencing back and forth and looking up definitions just to make sure that I completely understand these programs. And I'm still left with questions. So it's no surprise that there's constantly confusion, as even on the political level, even on the Senate level, there's confusion as to what these stimulus bills are actually saying and actually giving out through these programs. So I'm so thankful that I have a contact at the SBA who can clarify these things, and then you get the best information possible right away. So I had some additional questions regarding these programs that I needed addressing and you need addressing. So the questions that I asked this time are, there are many people stating that they're waiting for their targeted grants to be funded. Does the SBA have a new expected timeline for these applicants? So if we remember, the targeted advance came out in the December stimulus bill that would bump up your EIDL grant from $1,000 or $2,000, whatever you received before, bump that up to $10,000 as long as you hit the three criteria: the low income area, the 30% reduction in gross receipts, and 300 or fewer employees. Now, many people have applied for that program starting about 30 days ago, maybe 35 days ago for the very first recipients. And per the stimulus law, it said that they should receive funding or they should receive notification of rejection within 21 days. And for most people, that hasn't yet happened. There's a very slim portion of people who have actually received funding. However, that's far from the majority, and there's a lot of people just left waiting, sitting on their hands like, when am I going to get my funding? We don't know what's going on. Last week, we found out that the big part of the delay was the IRS transcripts, your tax transcripts, and the IRS sending those, because the IRS is bogged down right now with tax returns, with stimulus checks, with the child tax credit, with all these changes that they're dealing with right now. So that kind of bogged down the targeted advance program. So we wanted an update there. And my second question was, has there been any movement towards opening the targeted EIDL to new applicants who didn't apply before December 27th? I know a few weeks back you had said that that's a possibility. So I wanted to know, has there been any movement here? Can people expect that this program is going to open back up if they just happen to miss that deadline? Like, let's say you hit all those criteria for the targeted EIDL advance, but you just simply didn't apply before December 27th, you should be eligible to receive that funding. So if and when is this going to open back up? And there's some really good news there. And then my third and final question here of the day was, with the exception of new legislation, is there the possibility of the $10,000 EIDL advance opening up to all businesses, not just the targeted businesses, to all businesses, like the one that we received last year with $1,000 per employee? Will this ever open up so it's just $10,000 to all the businesses if funding is left over after targeted grants are completely sent out? So if there's still funding left there after all the loans are paid, after all the grants are paid, will this be open to everyone? Can we expect this? What's it looking like? What's the trajectory here? And I luckily received a response pretty darn quickly here. I'm really happy with how fast I'm actually able to get responses at this point. Also, if you have any good questions to ask that aren't addressed anywhere, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And if it's something that hasn't been addressed, I will absolutely ask it and we'll address it on a future video. So jumping into the first question here, many people are stating that they're still waiting for the targeted grants to be funded. Does the SBA have a new expected timeline for these applicants? And the answer here, over the last few days, we've increased the speed and number of approvals because we continue to make more progress streamlining our process. So we know that a select minority of people have received approvals, and they're saying that this is ramping up over time as more of those tax transcripts are going through. Also, remember, the tax transcript is based on your 2019 tax returns, not your 2020. So you don't have to have your 2020 taxes done in order to send that tax transcript in. Moving on, they say that the overall rate of approvals is expected to increase rapidly over the next few weeks, and many more businesses will receive approval notifications for those long-awaited targeted advance funds. So again, for most people who've already applied, it's been more than that 21-day expected period, and reasonably many people are getting frustrated about it. There will also be decline notifications that will be sent out sometime next week. So if we remember in that stimulus bill, it outlined that if you are not accepted to the targeted EIDL grant program, they have to send you a notice saying you weren't accepted and giving you reasoning why you weren't accepted. That way, if there's some kind of incorrect information, you'll be able to appeal it and then hopefully receive that targeted grant. So those decline notifications will be sent out starting next week as well. Moving on, he says, we realize that decline notices are not the good news that many applicants were hoping for, but at least they will receive a written confirmation on the outcome and won't be left wondering about the status. I suppose that's good to just not be left hanging. We appreciate everyone's patience as we have been working hard to implement the final stages of the Targeted EIDL Advance Program as quickly as possible. The Targeted Advance Program is now funded with $30 billion, and the SBA is committed to getting these funds out to eligible entities as fast as possible. And also remember, the EIDL loan program just bumped up from 6 months of working capital all the way up to 24 months of potential working capital through that EIDL loan. And I have a video that breaks down everything you need to know about that change as well. I'll have it linked up above here. The second question I had was, has there been any movement towards opening the targeted EIDL to new applicants who didn't apply before December 27th? I know a few weeks back you had said there's a possibility. So yeah, a few weeks back he had said if there's funding left over, this is something that they're willing to explore, but they're not sure yet. And I wanted an update on this, and I'm sure you want an update on, everyone wants an update on this. And the answer here was nothing to announce yet, but we do expect to make that announcement sometime in April. And if we look at our watches, at our calendars, it's almost April. So this could potentially be, I mean, it would be within a month that that announcement would be made. I mean, with all this additional funding, it's totally reasonable to expect that to be completely open. And like I said, it makes total sense that if someone hits the 3 targeted criteria, that they should be eligible to apply and receive that grant up to $10,000. So if you're in that low income census tract, which you can check with the link down in the description, you can check the SBA map to see if you're in a low income area. You should expect some major changes here within about a month, and that is extremely exciting that this will be open. And at the very least, more people who meet that targeted criteria will be able to get that funding that they need, and hopefully sooner than what the people are waiting for right now. Now moving on in the answer here, we know that there are a lot of potentially eligible businesses waiting for that announcement, so we look forward to sharing that news as soon as possible, and I will let you know as soon as possible, so make sure you like this video and subscribe and do all the things. Keep in mind that the Economic Aid Act required that we give priority consideration to first, businesses that received less than the full advance. You already received something but less than the full advance, and 2, businesses that haven't received anything yet due to the lack in available funding from the original program. We're making sure we comply with the statutory requirements and giving those priority groups identified in the Act sufficient time to apply for the targeted advance before we open it to new applicants. So this is absolutely in their minds, and it seems like this will happen very soon. The good news is that when we do eventually open the targeted advance program to new applicants, that is wonderful phrasing. When we open it, it's no longer will it be open if we open it, it's when we open it, which the change in sentence syntax here, we absolutely love to see that. When it's open, the turnaround times should be much faster as we get up to full processing speed. So, I mean, with this, with more time, the IRS is going to be a little bit less bogged down on those tax transcripts. They're going to have their systems in place. I expect to see the processing much faster, especially because there won't be quite the backlog. So this is extremely exciting for those who hit that criteria but haven't yet applied yet. I know several business owners who are in that boat that I'm looking forward to being able to send a text like, hey, go apply for this thing right now. That's awesome news. That really is. Now, the third question, with the exception of new legislation, is there the possibility of the $10,000 EIDL advance opening to all businesses if funding is left over after targeted grants are completely sent out? Now, before I read this answer, make sure you go and grab a free stock with Webull, link down in the description. I actually just got an email a few weeks back from someone who got a free Google stock, and that's over $2,000. Plus, I'll get a free stock as well, so you'll be helping out this channel. You don't have to spend any money. You deposit $100, don't have to spend it, you get some free stocks. So on to the answer here. I'm glad you asked this question because I think there's some confusion about the SBA's perceived authority to reopen the original EIDL advance program to provide businesses with $10,000 EIDL advances without new legislation. A lot of businesses welcomed the administrator's announcement this week that at the beginning of April 6, should be 2021, the SBA would more than triple the EIDL loan limit to 24 months. Again, I have a video that breaks that all down for the economic injury disaster loan for a maximum of $500,000. The administrator has also committed, by the way, to increasing the total loan limit to the maximum $2 million. Now, we don't know if that's going to increase the monthly amount, above 24 months to a higher amount. So I'm not sure if that's going to affect loans that are smaller than $500,000 already, but we'll keep an eye out on that in the future. The SBA's redirection on the loan limit policy naturally led many to ask whether we would change the previous policy that limited EIDL advances to $1,000 per employee. However, changing that unpopular policy would not change the fact that the original EIDL advance has been out of funds since last summer. Congress appropriated a total of $20 billion for the original EIDL advance program, $10 billion through the CARES Act, and another $10 billion through the PPP and Healthcare Enhancement Act, and those funds were fully obligated as of July 10th, 2020. So he's saying the SBA doesn't actually have the power to change those programs retroactively. SBA is not able to provide $10,000 EIDL advances to all businesses, meaning those businesses that don't already qualify through the Targeted Advance program, unless either more funds are appropriated for the original EIDL advance program, or there is a statutory change that authorizes the SBA to make targeted advances to businesses not located in a low-income community. We see campaigns to call the SBA to reverse the previous policy that limited the EIDL advances to $1,000 per employee, but unfortunately a policy change alone would not bring back the original advance program. So basically what happened is when that original funding to the EIDL grant program was appropriated to the SBA, they said, hey, if we want this funding to spread out, we have to just do $1,000 per employee instead of $10,000. But he's saying they never received additional funding through that exact same program, so they weren't able to up it to everyone. And that makes sense because if we look at the stimulus bills, every single time it says there is more money to the EIDL grant program, it changes up the wording, or it's something like strike this, add that, like strike any entity, add in covered entity, which is the entities that are in the low income tract, the revenue reduction, and under certain amounts of employees. So what we would need is a stimulus bill passed in Congress and signed by the president that ups it to $10,000 without changing anything to the original CARES Act verbiage. That's exactly what needs to happen. Now, there is a bill that has been proposed and is currently being debated. So that bill could potentially be passed and would give the $10,000 advances to all businesses. So there's nothing the SBA can particularly do except for talk to Congress people. And there's nothing that we can do as far as asking the SBA to make any changes, but what we can do is reach out to our Congress people if we want change to be made and say, hey, can you push for this to happen? Obviously, this is a vital program and something that would really help. So we have some really good news here, but we also have some news that isn't ideal in that we now know that the SBA, if there is additional funding left over, can't just reappropriate those funds to the normal EIDL $10,000 grant program without additional legislation being made. So if you want change to be made, reach out to a local legislator and try and get some change that way. And that's going to do it for this update. If you enjoy these in-depth looks at the complicated EIDL rules and regulations, make sure you like this video and subscribe and click that notification bell, and I will see you next time.